Hello and welcome back to another HIA VIS-2000 video tutorial. This tutorial is aimed at uh, kind of showing you how to kind of manually test stuff when you first get the system plumbed in, just prior to doing an actual auto commissioning process, which we'll cover in another tutorial. Uh, but you want to make sure everything's working and that there's no leaks and that your valves are coming on, there's water coming out. It's actually counting the amount of water that's coming out or metering it. So the way you do that, and this should be a pretty short video tutorial. I'll jump into system real quick. So just so you see, we've got three banks configured. So it's a 36 plant system. So what you want to do is you want to go into system, maintenance, and we'll cover maintenance mode in more detail later, but you're probably going to see something like this. However many banks you have configured, you're going to see them show up. This is what you call gallons per second. So this is how many gallons per second your system can deliver. Um, this is what the system thinks it takes for your system to deliver. Every building's different. Every plumbing arrangements are different. How quickly the water flows to that given area is different. So the system has the ability to teach itself what's normal to your building. But um, before you do that, when you first get the system, and at any point in time, if you want to set these back to their default values, you can do that. But note that the system does give up after a certain amount of time that it considers to be normal, and then with some conservative value on there, quite a bit of conservative value. This will let it run for quite a while before it gives up. So you really do want to do the auto commissioning process. That will be covered in another tutorial. But prior to the commissioning system, you want to make sure that the valves are opening and closing like you would expect, and you want to make sure that the volume feedback is coming in as expected. So the way you handle that is you come in here, and however many banks you have configured, so if there's 6 banks, you'll see 6 of these buttons here. Right now there's only 3 banks because it's a 36 plant system. So we're going to just go into this bank 1, for example, and that's going to pull up. And when you do that, it's going to automatically open the feed valve depending on your tank configuration, which we'll cover in another tutorial. In this case, it's just a single tank configuration. And then when you just start the pump, you can start and stop the pump. It handles the valves the actual ball valves next to the tank. It handles that automatically for you. You don't have to manage that, but you do have to stop and start the pump. So you can stop and start the pump here. The system waters 6 valves at a time. So you can choose, am I watering valves 1 through 6 or am I watering valves 7 through 12? And you can also look at your volume feedback down here as you're running it. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that now. And a good practice when you first get the system plumbed and hooked up and you kind of just want to see how it works before you kind of go into some auto commissioning mode, because you don't want to be in the middle of an auto commissioning mode and have to shut it all down and start over. You really want to like finish it out. And so you want to make sure everything is working as expected before you do that. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the pump on in this case. And then, so now the pump's running, and I want to just turn on valve 1. And it's good to have somebody standing next to that plant or that valve to confirm it. So as I do that, you'll see that I turn it on, and now we're getting volume feedback against that plant. That's good. But you also want somebody there to actually observe that the water's flowing like you'd expect. You turn it off, the volume feedback stops as it should. And then if you want to zero that at any time to kind of understand it, you can just click 0. Okay, and it'll zero all of them out, by the way, not just the one. So typically I go like this, and somebody's like, yep, it's flowing, it's looking good. And I do that, and they're like, yep, okay, it stopped. And then I go to number 2, yep, okay, it's flowing, looking good. And, now it's stopped. And, seeing the water flow physically, seeing this volume count up, and then it stops counting when you shut it off. That's a solid indication that everything is working like it should. But you also want that person there to physically observe it, because maybe you have a leak or something that you want to know about. That's very important. And this is really useful for troubleshooting. It's also super useful for initial setup and just kind of making sure everything works on a 1 per valve basis. So as you can see, I'm kind of just walking through each one of these, and I'm actually going to turn them all on, and then I'll demonstrate if you zero, it zeros all of them, right? And so now Now they're all coming up. That's great. And I want to demonstrate, if you want to go through valves 7 through 12, you don't actually have to turn these off. You can, but if you just do that, it turns them off for you automatically. There's a power budget. We can only turn 6 valves on at a time, so the code is written such that it'll automatically shut off those when you flip to the other one. So give me a second here. I got to shut my speakers down. Okay, sorry about that. So now you can see that as I'm turning these on, valves 7 through 12 are now active. And if I zero those, it zeroes everybody, and now only 7 through 12 are going. But if I just flip back to 1 through 6, those guys shut off automatically. So if I come down, you can see they're all off, and so on. So it's generally a good practice to shut the pump off before you leave, but it's also worth noting that, I'll go ahead and turn like everything on here. And then, maybe you forgot and you just click done, and then we come back in, and you'll see that that the code is written that it actually killed everything automatically. So it is automatic. You can just click done, but it's generally a good practice to kind of do some housekeeping, as we call it, and come back and turn everything off before you leave. But if you forget, system should do it for you. And then the same is true for, you're in bank 2. So it's worth noting, if you're here, it'll say you're in bank 1. If you're here, it'll say you're in bank 2, bank 3, and so on. So that's really it when it comes to auto, or not auto. This is kind of a pre-auto commission process. It also can be used and is very, very useful for troubleshooting and understanding what's going on. So I hope you find that helpful. This was a pretty short tutorial, but it's super important to kind of go through those steps when you first plumb in the system. You do not want to find out that you have a plumbing problem, a leak, whatever, in the middle of an auto commissioning process. You kind of got to cancel the process, and it's you can only quit it, and it gets kind of funky. So just do yourself a favor and go through this process, and just be sure of yourself that the valves are all working like you'd expect, and that the volume feedback is coming in as you would expect. Hope you found it useful, and there'll be more video tutorials to come. For now, so long.